Hi students. So here we are on my front porch. I'm going to be starting this lecture on transition services for young adults who leave special education classrooms and public schools. And ironically, I have a very good friend who had a son who just died 4 days ago. And he was a person who was very profoundly autistic, so much so that he was nonverbal, and I think actually always had to wear like a Depends diaper. So not a super high functioning person, right? And I thought I would start by reading to you, without saying his name, reading to you his obituary, which was recently in the newspaper. What I love about this obituary is that you really get a sense of who this person was. And I'm sure his mother wrote this because she always sent us a Christmas letter, like some people do. And she's just a beautiful writer and always described her son's life with real sensitivity and happiness. And he had a life. And this is the thing that really struck me when I read this young man's obituary. So here it goes. I'll call him Fossil, which is not his real name. Fossil, 32, passed away peacefully in his home. He was born on February in 1988, where he grew up and attended school. In 2011, he moved to Albemarle, North Carolina, and lived in a group home owned and operated by the nonprofit organization Autism Supports. He lived in a beautiful home, enjoyed many activities, and lived wonderful and fulfilling years there. Fossil loved the wind and walked almost daily in the park in the beautiful town of Albemarle. He had his own bedroom, bathroom, and a computer room, and was happy. He would often have special treats, like going to Salisbury to get Krispy Kreme donuts. He was an avid opera fan, developing his love of opera at the age of 2, when he first began watching Luciano Pavarotti in a Christmas video. His interest in opera singer concerts and opera productions expanded to also include legends Jose Carreras, Placido Domingo, and numerous others. Although he was nonverbal, he recognized all of the arias, singers, and conductors. He also enjoyed going to the movies to see comedies and watching UNC TV, especially the PBS NewsHour, EastEnders, and the McLaughlin Group. Like many young adults, he loved searching the internet on his computer and was particularly good at finding many opera singers on YouTube. He loved opera so much that those who spent time with him said that they developed a greater appreciation. For almost 1 year, his most favorite outside activity was going over to the neighbors, Jenny and Rudy, every afternoon. He would wrestle their black Labrador retriever, Nick, to the ground. Nick Dog seemed to understand Fossil and would eagerly anticipate his visits. Fossil's father was of the opinion that if Fossil could talk, he would have said that wrestling with Nick Dog was one of the happiest times of his life. For several years, Fossil enjoyed the beach and spent many days there during the summer in the water with his father and brother, while his mother stood at the water's edge watching them and waiting with towels in hand. Fossil knew the routine: life jackets on them all, and a safety line attached to his jacket, which his dad held on to. Everyone was of the opinion that Fossil always instinctively knew when he would get hit by a wave and would turn his head towards the land to avoid being hit in the face. It was as if he could feel the pull of the ocean well before the wave came crashing down. And I'm skipping a section, but it goes on to say, Fossil attended Cumberland County Schools and received his graduation certificate from Douglas Byrd High School. From its inception in 1996 until he moved to Albemarle, he also attended Camp Sunshine Summer Development Day program, founded by his parents. He was always welcomed with loving arms by all the camp staff. Let's see, before moving to Albemarle, he was especially loved by his support staff and sitters. Let's see. I think this is probably enough. I'll stop reading now, but I just thought it was such a beautiful obituary, because it really talked about how this young man lived his life. And he was quite, pretty significantly impaired. And so as we talked through chapter 15, I think it is, transition into adulthood, this young man, did transition into adulthood to the degree that he was able to do so. And his parents, found a wonderful place for him to live in a group setting where he could feel like a young adult rather than always being at home. He did stay home with his parents probably until he was in his late 20s, I must say. But this whole chapter is about people like Fossil. And I want to ask you, before we begin this lecture, to just imagine, you having a child such as this, and think about having reared this child all through, elementary school and junior high and high school, and always being an advocate for your child, and then knowing that soon high school will end, and you want your child to continue to have a life of being in society and having, friendships and being exposed to things. And honestly, y'all, once people finish high school and they can extend their high school experience to age 21, after that, unless they're working or in a community program, their lives can become very, 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 very small and limited really quickly. And so this is a pretty cool chapter which asks us to understand and know, the facts about what federal programs exist and how students are transitioned from this high school environment into what we hope will be the most stimulating adult life that they are ready for. So what I want you to do, considering this chapter, is to think about a couple of things, and this is just from my notes. What do our schools need to provide to give each special needs teen the best preparation for life in the real world? And this is something, of course, that professional people in vocational rehab and special education talk about all the time. They attend, annual meetings in their professional group, and they exchange ideas and information about what is it that we can do to, prepare young people in the very best ways. And of course, now that we have all this awesome technology available to us, students can even use recordings on their phones, which might have, step-by-step videos of how to do their job if they're working outside in the community. And they can use, tap on their phone and watch the video clip of the next task that is related to their work life, and then tap again and look what the next step is, and tap again and look what the finishing step is. So I want to let you know that it's kind of exciting what's available to students now in terms of using technology to help them stay on track at work, to help them make sure that they do every step of a process so that they can keep their jobs, and ways of learning self-monitoring that really used to be done by job coaches. And so that's just kind of a little teaser in terms of, how professionals are trying to enrich the lives of young workers such as this. So what do our schools need to be doing? And actually in the chapter, kind of towards the end, there are some comments about how our schools traditionally have done in the last 10 years, and also what people think really needs to continue to happen or to be enriched. So let's learn about this group of young people and this very special type of educational service, which kind of starts to happen definitely in junior high school, and should begin to happen in junior high school, but certainly in the high school years. The large aim of their teachers and parents is ways to prepare these kids for life outside of the home, probably, hopefully, and also life inside a work environment. And so remember, helping youth with disabilities, this is a quote I wrote that I really liked, helping youth with disabilities develop the skills they need to achieve the quality of life they deserve as adults is the ultimate goal of special education. So I guess one thing I want to continue to remember as I talk about this with you in the lecture is that the whole idea with transition services is to help these young people move out of their sheltered high school experience and move out of their sheltered homes as their parents want them to the degree that their parents might want them to. And to let them live as full a life, as well-rounded a life as all of us want to live when we leave our family homes. We want to have a place that's cool to live, we want to make our own decisions, we want to cook our own food, we want to have our own friends, schedule our own activities, we want to work and earn money and have choices, and to the degree that it's available to students with special needs, this is what they want. And so all of this chapter about transition services and how that's done is really with that aim in mind, that outcome in mind, that students would have the most fulfilling life as young adults, and then, you know, older adults too, as they can possibly have. So who secures employment? This is an interesting thing to think about. Do all people with special needs seek employment? Do they all reach the level of having employment? And so this gives us a little bit of a historical background and then some research background about how many students, what percentages actually are able to have full-time employment or even employment at all. So the book does reference a couple of studies, one that's from 2000 and 2001, kind of that school year. It's a representative sample across the nation, as I recall. And so what they did was find that 57% of students who leave transitional services are working for pay. So 57%, I actually feel like that's kind of pretty good. But 66% is what typically developing students actually, the level of employment that they enjoy upon leaving school. So this is important. Also, the idea that, you know, staying in high school for these students is pretty critical. It's important for them not to drop out. And so if you were a teacher of this type of student, or you were a parent, or you were involved with, you know, training them, one of your big aims needs to be for them not to drop out of high school. 61% of students who complete high school find employment, but if they drop out of high school, that number drops to 41%. And so, you know, this whole idea of students completing high school is really important for this population. And actually, generally, you know, the higher the level of employment, the higher the level of education that these students can achieve, the better outcomes they're going to reach. And so here we might want to talk about sort of the range of these students. So this could be a student who has, you know, legal blindness, but in every other way is a really smart learner. This could be a student who is hearing impaired. All the special needs that we've actually studied, you know, in each of the chapters of this book, this is the group that we're talking about. So I don't want you to only to think about this group as being students who are, you know, severely mentally impaired. Okay, I'm going to stop the chapter for a moment.